Here's August 2015, questions 14 to 24. 14 says, which recursively defined function has a first term equal to 10 and a common difference of 4? Well, first term equal to 10 means f of 1 equals 10. So we can eliminate choice 2 and choice 4 because our first term has to be 10. Common difference of 4. Well, that means that we're going to be adding 4 each time, and it has to be choice 1 because this tells us that we're going to take the term before it and then just add 4 each time. Number 15. Firing a piece of pottery in a kiln takes place at different temperatures for different amounts of time. The graph below shows the temperatures in a kiln while firing a piece of pottery after the kiln is preheated to 200 degrees. During which time interval did the temperature in the kiln show the greatest average rate of change? Well, that means your slope, okay? So we're looking for slope, your m value, and we want to know which one is the highest. Well, if you're very good at visuals and you can tell which one is the steepest slope, you'll be able to choose your answer quickly. However, it's good to do the algebra just to double check. So, your slope formula is your y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to go from 0 to 1 hour. Well, we're starting at 200, and so your change in y is 700 minus 200 divided by 1 minus 0, so that will give you 500 as a slope. To check from 1 hour to 1.5 hours, well, that is 900 minus 700 divided by 1.5 minus 1. Well, 900 minus 700 is 200, and divided by 0.5 is 400, so that won't work because that's not bigger than 500. 2.5 to 5, well, I can already tell that this is not as steep of a slope as from the 0 to 1 hour. And from 5 to 8 hours, I'm not even going to bother because that's also not as steep as 0 to 1. So your answer is choice 1. Number 16, which graph represents f of x equals the absolute value of x when x is less than 1 and the square root of x when x is greater than or equal to 1. Here we have a piecewise function. So let's start with the first, the square root of x. Well, no, this is the absolute value of x, sorry. This looks like a v, okay? When x is less than 1, okay, so we'd stop about here, which means it has to be either choice 1 or choice 2. Choice 3 and 4 are not the v, that's more of a u, like a parabola. Now we have to move on to the square root of x. Well, if we look at the square root of x, and we look at some x values that are greater than or equal to 1. Let's try 1, and then let's try 4, and 9. And I'm only using these values because those are perfect squares. So the square root of 1 is 1, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9, 3. So that means that we're going to have a graph like choice 2. Okay? So choice 2 is your answer. Number 17, if f of x equals x squared minus 2x minus 8, g of x equals 1/4 x minus 1, for which values of x is f of x equal to g of x? Well, the easiest way to do this is to type in both of these equations into y equals, and you're going to have a table with x values, with y1 values, and y2 values because you have two equations. And what you'll do is you'll check some of these values. So negative 1.75, if you go into your table setup and you start, your table's starting point is negative 1.75, you'll see that your y values are the same. They're both the negative 1.438 for both. Okay? And so we know that that is one of our x values where they both have in common. And so let's see, if I check negative 1.438, well, they don't have the same y values, so let's check 4. So if I check when x is 4, my y values are both 0, so my two answers are negative 1.75 and 4, choice 2. Number 18, Alicia has invented a new app for smartphones that two companies are interested in purchasing for a 2-year contract. Company A is offering her $10,000 for the first month and will increase the amount each month by $5,000. Company B is offering $500 for the first month and will double their payment each month from the previous month. Monthly payments are made at the end of each month. For which monthly payment will Company B's payment first exceed Company A's payment? Okay. Well, what I would do is I would make a chart to figure out when Company B will exceed Company A. And over here, I'm just going to have the number of months. Okay, and I'll go all the way down to 9 if I have to. Okay, so Company A, we'll start there. Well, we'll start with 10,000. Each time we're going to increase by 5,000, so we'll have 15,000, then we'll have 20,000, 25,000, 30,000, 35,000, 40,000, 45,000, and 50,000. Company B starts with 500 the first month, and then after that it just doubles. So 500 goes to 1,000, which goes to 2,000, which goes to 4,000, 8,000, 16,000, 32,000, 64,000, and I can stop because if you look at 8 months, finally B exceeds A, so that would be choice 3. Number 19. The two sets of data below represent the number of runs scored by two different youth baseball teams over the course of a season, Team A versus Team B. Which set of statements about the mean and the standard deviation is true? Well, what you need to know is that the mean has a symbol of X with a bar above it on your calculator, and standard deviation has a symbol like a little O with a line and then a little X. So, what you're going to do is type Team A into list 1, Team B into list 2. Then you're going to hit Stat again, you're going to scroll over to Calc, and you're going to choose choice 1 for 1 var statistic, and then you're going to type in L1 for Team A, and then you'll type in L2 to look at Team B. So if I look at A first, my mean is 6, and my standard deviation is, well, if I round, I'll have 3.2. Now, if I look at Team B, I have my mean as 6.9 if I round to the nearest tenth, and my standard deviation as 3.1. So, my mean for B is bigger than my mean for A, so that means it's not choice 2, it's not choice 4, and my standard deviation for A is larger than my standard deviation for B, which means that it has to be choice 1. Number 20. If Lila completes the square for f of x equals x squared minus 12x plus 7, in order to find the minimum, she must write f of x in the general form of f of x equals, parentheses, x minus a, the whole thing squared, plus b. What is the value of a for f of x? Well, the number inside the parentheses is always your b over 2 value. So what we need to find is b and b over 2. b will be negative 12 based off of the equation, so b over 2 must be negative 6. The reason it's negative 6, that's why there's a negative sign there. So your a value in this case is just 6. Choice 1. Number 21. Given the following quadratic functions, g of x and n of x, which statement about these functions is true? Choice 1 says over the interval negative 1 to 1, the average rate of change for n of x is less than that for g of x. Average rate of change is your slope. So if we look, let's first draw g of x table. Okay, so we have x and g of x, which is our y column. And I have from negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. My y values are 0, 4, 6, 6, 4, 0. So, from negative 1 to 1, if I look at the slope here, my slope will be 4 minus 6 over 1 minus a negative 1. It gives me negative 2 over 2, so a slope of negative 1. When I look at n of x, I'm looking from 9 minus 5 over 1 minus negative 1, and that would be 4 over 2, which is 2. So the average rate of change for n of x is less than g of x. Well, that's just not true. Choice 2, the y-intercept of g of x is greater than the y-intercept for n of x. Well, the y-intercept for g of x is 6. The y-intercept for n of x is 8. And it says that g of x is greater than n of x. Again, that's not true. The function g of x has a greater maximum value than n of x. Well, g of x has a maximum value, well, halfway between these two repeating 6 values, we'd have negative 0.5, and our y value there would be 6.25, but that is not bigger than our maximum in this one, which is 9. And the sum of the roots of n of x is greater than the sum of the roots of g of x. Well, this is going to be our answer, and let's just double check. So the roots in g of x would be 2 and negative 3. So the sum means to add. 2 plus negative 3 equals negative 1. So this is g of x. And if I look versus n of x, I have my roots would be negative 2 and 4. When I add negative 2 plus 4, I end up with 2. So n of x would be greater than the sum of the roots of g of x. 22. For which value of p and w is p plus w a rational number? Rational number can be a fraction, okay? It can be any decimal as long as it ends, and it can be any integer. So if I look here, they're all radicals. I want a perfect square. So if I look, only choice 2 has both perfect squares, because 1 over radical 4 is really 1/2, and if I'm adding 1 over radical 9, I get 1/3. Okay, and these would add to a rational number. Number 23, the solution of the equation x plus 3 squared equals 7 is, well, the quickest way to do this, opposite of squaring is square rooting. So I have x plus 3 because the square root and the square cancel, equals, remember, plus or minus because the radical, plus or minus radical 7. To get x alone, I'll subtract 3. So my answer is x equals a negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 7, which is choice 3. 24, which trinomial is equivalent to the following? Well, first I have 3 times the x minus 2 squared, which is just x minus 2 times x minus 2, minus, I can distribute this negative 2, so I'll have minus 2x plus 2. Let me do this double distribution, so I'll have 3 times, I'll have x squared minus 4x plus 4 when I combine like terms, minus 2x plus 2, distribute the 3, I'll end up with 3x squared minus 12x plus 12 minus 2x plus 2. When I combine like terms, I will end up with, let's write it over here, 3x squared minus 14x plus 14, which is choice 4.